At the age of 16, he taught me how to love someone. He taught me so well that for the next 10 years after he left, I could only live on memories. After years of separation, he finally appeared in front of me once again. When Fong Jingjin saw Jiao again, it was on a late autumn evening. She had just bought a tuna sandwich from the convenience store downstairs of the laboratory building. It happened to be the end of class, and Fong Jingjin blended into the crowd, looking like a naive freshman who had just started her university journey. Fong Jingjin's juniors once described her as someone on whom time seemed to leave no trace. But Fong Jingjin felt this description wasn't entirely accurate. More precisely, during the 10 years without seeing Jiao, her time seemed to almost stand still and refuse to pass. The convenience store attendant heated up her sandwich, and she was about to return to her office to continue reading literature when she bumped into Jiao at the corner of the hallway. At first, Fong Jingjin didn't notice him. She only saw her collaborative advisor, Professor Song, with 2 doctoral students, standing not far away, discussing with a young man. She lowered her head, preparing to bypass them, when Professor Song called out, "Jingjin." The man turned slightly, and Fong Jingjin saw that familiar face she used to see frequently 10 years ago. Professor Song smiled and introduced Jiao. "This is our collaborative postdoctoral fellow, the youngest student under my guidance, Fong Jingjin." Then turning to Fong Jingjin, Professor Song said, "This is you, the person in charge of technology at our company. We'll have some cooperation with our lab in the future." Professor Song noticed the sandwich in Fong Jingjin's hand, frowned slightly, and said, "Eating this kind of unnutritious stuff every day. Why don't you join us for dinner tonight? Jingjin, would you like to come along?" Professor Song's tone was somewhat coaxing, but he didn't expect her to agree so easily. Everyone in the biology department knew that Fong Jingjin, from the molecular biology department, had an outstanding resume with numerous top-tier publications at a young age. However, she was not good at socializing, focused solely on academics, introverted, and hardly participated in any gatherings other than academic conferences. She was practically socially anxious. Fong Jingjin's gaze met Jiao's, and she spent about 3 seconds observing him. Quickly averting her eyes, she thought for 5 seconds before saying, "Okay." Professor Song was surprised by her acceptance, paused for a moment, but Jiao lightly smiled and took a step forward, getting closer to Fong Jingjin. He looked down at her, his voice less formal than when discussing business. "Long time no see, Jingjin. You still remember me, right?" Fong Jingjin wanted to say that her memory was excellent, that she even remembered how many points Jiao scored in their first joint exam in high school. However, the words stopped at her lips, and she lightly nodded, calling out his name, Jiao. The smile on Jiao's lips widened slightly. Professor Song asked, "Do you two know each other, Jiao?" Jiao calmly took the sandwich from Fong Jingjin's hand and said, "We were high school classmates." Fong Jingjin nodded in agreement. The evening restaurant was pre-booked by Jiao. During the dinner, the conversation revolved around research topics. Fong Jingjin earnestly ate the dishes Jiao served her and listened attentively to their discussions, although her professional competence at this table was second only to Professor Song's. She didn't initiate any topics, even though her academic abilities were remarkable. Fong Jingjin tilted her head slightly to look at Jiao. She felt that Jiao was somewhat unfamiliar. He had the same face as the Jiao in her memories, but he no longer possessed the carefree demeanor of years ago. He had shed his school uniform for a shirt, becoming steady and gentle, as if all his edges had been smoothed out. His expressions were appropriate, his tone gentlemanly and polite, making it difficult for anyone to gauge his emotional fluctuations. Fong Jingjin had studied courses on human microexpressions before, and she could accurately judge whether a person's smile was genuine or fake. She was certain that Jiao's smile throughout the 3-hour dinner was merely out of courtesy, not from genuine sincerity. As the temperature in Ning City began to drop in September, Jiao bid farewell to Professor Song downstairs. Then, he asked Fong Jingjin, "Where do you live?" "In the university's postdoc apartment." Professor Song's 2 doctoral students were worried that Fong Jingjin might feel uncomfortable, so they quickly spoke up. "It's okay, Mr. Qi. We'll accompany Sister Jean back." Fang Jinjin looked up at Qiyu and said, "No, I live in an apartment near the school." Qiyu leaned in slightly and asked her, "Shall I take you home then?" Fang Jinjin nodded in agreement. The car's heater was on low, and Qiyu asked Fang Jinjin about her recent life. Fang Jinjin answered all his questions, and there was no awkwardness in the conversation. The tuna sandwich had long gone cold, left by Qiyu aside. During a pause at a traffic light, he said, "Are you brave enough to buy things by yourself now?" "It's not that difficult," Fang Jinjin replied. After years of separation, Fang Jinjin had learned to converse like a normal person. Though nervous and sweating when seeing Qiyu, she had learned to remain calm. Fang Jinjin once carefully recalled and calculated her interactions with Qiyu. In the 2 years they knew each other, they had approximately 126 instances, like the current one, where they were silent but alone together in the same space. The total time spent chatting with Qiyu amounted to about 28 hours and 34 minutes. The first time Fang Jinjin saw Qiyu wasn't as nerve-wracking as it is now. Or rather, when she was 14, Fang Jinjin had no idea who Qiyu was. At that time, she had received an acceptance letter from University A through a chemistry competition, but her sister, Fang Xian, did not agree to let her attend the junior class. Concerned, Fang Xian said to her husband, "Jinjin is still so young. She should live a more normal life. Besides, she's so young. Sending her to University A without me by her side makes me worry." Fang Jinjin didn't have many thoughts about where to go to school. In the end, she obediently followed her sister's arrangement and went to study in the first year of high school. During the first month of high school, she sat in a corner by the window in the classroom, memorized the names of everyone in the class, but hardly spoke to anyone. She spent every day reading various scientific materials and mostly responded with or oh. She had a very low profile. Qiyu, on the other hand, was the opposite. He attracted attention as soon as he entered the school. He was tall, with distinct facial features. Even in the simplest school uniform, he appeared rugged, exuding an air of freedom and nonchalance. Such boys were the most popular among girls in high school. Although he had a slightly rebellious look, he didn't put on any airs. He spent his days fooling around with his buddies from the baseball team, shining under the summer sun on the school playground. Halfway through the first semester, on a December evening after class, when the sky was already dark and it was pouring rain outside, and it wasn't yet time for evening self-study, there weren't many people in the classroom. Fang Jinjin spoke softly on the phone with Fang Xian. "It's raining heavily, and there's traffic jam. You don't need to ask Uncle Lee to bring me food. I'll go to the cafeteria myself." Fang Xian didn't believe her and said, "The cafeteria is crowded, and you still have to choose food. I really will go. I'm not language impaired." She persisted for a while, and finally, Fang Xian compromised, reminding her to eat. After hanging up the phone, she stood up and quickly went to the cafeteria. Standing at the entrance of the cafeteria for a minute, Fang Jinjin observed how students interacted with the cafeteria uncle. After a while, she decisively gave up the idea of talking to strangers and decided not to eat dinner that night. Just as she returned to the classroom and sat down, Qiyu, who was sitting behind her, suddenly leaned in. "Fang Jinjin, can I borrow your homework?" Fang Jinjin was startled. When she turned her head, she saw a tall figure looming over her. Fang Jinjin froze, only able to blink and breathe, not knowing how to respond. Qiyu's lips carried a hint of youthful recklessness. "Is it okay?" Fang Jinjin didn't know how to refuse people and didn't intend to refuse either. She nodded and took out the practice papers, preparing to hand them to him. Then, out of nowhere, Qiyu asked, "Fang Jinjin, why aren't you going to eat? Not eating will stunt your growth. Why are you so short?" Qiyu's friend, Pei Jing, couldn't stand it anymore and interrupted him, saying, "Jinjin is only 14. It's normal not to grow tall at her age." So she's just a kid," Qiyu said. He glanced at Fang Jinjin, leaned in to meet her eyes, and asked again, "Why aren't you speaking? Are you mute?" 17-year-old Chiyu's speech wasn't as measured as when he was 30, a bit mischievous, but with a tone that carried a smile, not making people dislike him. Fang Jingjin stared at Chiyu for a while before speaking up to defend herself, her voice very soft. "I can speak." Chiyu smiled, took the papers from her hand, and thought for a moment. Then he turned back to his seat, grabbed an unopened box of chocolates, and came back, asking her, "Do you like sweets?" It happened to be the eve of Christmas. Chiyu was a popular figure in the school, with gifts from others piled up on his desk. He opened the box of chocolates, set aside the love letters inside, and handed one to Fang Jingjin. Fang Jingjin frowned lightly and said, "These are given to you by someone else." Although she didn't understand why her classmates liked to date each other, she understood that giving gifts was a confession of love. So, she found it hard to understand why Chiyu shared chocolates given to him by someone else. Chiyu's explanation wasn't very convincing. "It would be a waste not to eat them. I can't exactly return them to the sender, can I? You just help me solve a bit of the problem." He added, "If you don't like chocolates, it's fine. You can nibble on dry bread with us." Later, Fang Jingjin nibbled on 3 chocolates, along with half a dry bread and a bottle of milk under Chiyu and Pei Jing's encouragement. Chiyu parked the car downstairs from Fang Jingjin's apartment and accompanied her out of the car. The neighborhood was quiet, with few people walking around at night. Chiyu casually grabbed a casual jacket from the car and draped it over Fang Jingjin's shoulders. "It's been getting colder lately. Aren't you bringing a jacket when you go out?" He glanced at Fang Jingjin and suddenly chuckled lightly, saying, "Fang Jingjin, are you not eating properly, so you haven't grown taller?" The dim streetlights cast a faint glow on Chiyu's face, making his expression a bit more vivid. To Fang Jingjin, it finally overlapped with the Chiyu from years ago. Fang Jingjin spoke up, saying, "I do eat." "Does eating sandwiches count as eating? Didn't you hire a housekeeper?" "The housekeeper only prepares breakfast." "What about lunch and dinner?" Chi spoke to Fang Jingjin as if he were talking to a kindergarten kid. Fang Jingjin didn't appreciate being treated like a child and told him seriously, "I ate at the school cafeteria, or I ask younger students to pack food for me. Moreover, overeating at lunch and dinner can lead to insufficient blood supply to the brain and make me sleepy, which isn't conducive to my experiments." Chiyu chuckled again, reached out to pat Fang Jingjin's head, and then escorted her to the elevator. While waiting for the elevator, Fang Jingjin's action of pressing the up button became hesitant. Chiyu, who had honed his people skills over the years in the marketplace, keenly noticed her hesitation. It seemed that encountering Fang Jingjin had revived the stubbornness that had been eroded by time and work from his bone marrow. He deliberately asked Fang Jingjin, "Old classmate, shouldn't you invite me up for a cup of tea as per the theory?" He thought Fang Jingjin would be full of refusal, written all over her face, but wouldn't be able to speak properly. Unexpectedly, Fang Jingjin had a relieved expression of sudden realization and looked at him, saying, "Do you want to come up for tea?" She quickly added, "But I don't know anything about tea leaves. You'll have to brew it yourself." Chiyu didn't expect Fang Jingjin's response. He was taken aback for a moment, counterattacked, and waved his hand. "No, maybe next time." Then he suddenly thought of something and adopted a lecturing tone. "You shouldn't casually let boys come up to your apartment to have tea at night, you know?" Fang Jingjin just said, "Oh," and didn't speak further. When the elevator reached the first floor, Fang Jingjin and Chiyu said goodbye, but she still seemed a bit hesitant in her movements and conflicted in her expression. Chiyu asked her with a smile, "What's wrong?" Fang Jingjin thought for 2 seconds and tentatively said, "I don't have your business card." During the day in the corridor, Chiyu handed out business cards to others, but Fang Jingjin arrived later and didn't get one. "Why do you need my business card?" Chiyu couldn't figure out her train of thought. Fang Jingjin didn't answer but persisted in looking at him. After a moment of confrontation, she relented first and said, "I need your business card to contact you." After a moment of contemplation, she politely asked, "Can I contact you?" Chiyu chuckled and said, "Of course," taking her phone from her hand. He had her unlock it and then entered his number into her contacts. He also opened a social chat app, added himself as a friend, and then returned the phone to Fang Jingjin. Shou said, "The number on my business card is for work. This is my private number. You can message me on WeChat anytime." Fang Jingjin glanced at her contacts and, following Chiyu's implication, looked up at him, asking, "Can I invite you to dinner?" Chiyu laughed, asking, "What are you going to treat me to?" "Sandwiches." But then he said, "Anytime," and finally sent Fang Jingjin upstairs, escorting her to her doorstep. He didn't enter, just stood outside the door and said to Fang Jingjin, "I'll wait for you to invite me." There weren't many things inside the apartment. Fang Jingjin hardly shopped, so the whole place was very tidy. She stood on the balcony, watching Chiyu walk back to the car, the headlights illuminating the black vehicle disappearing from view quickly. Fang Jingjin stood there for a while, holding her phone and looking at the phone number in her contacts. After 30 seconds, she memorized the string of numbers. Suddenly, her phone vibrated. It was a call from Fang Xian. "Jingjin, are you doing experiments again and not eating? I've been texting you, but you haven't replied." Fang Jingjin was stunned for a moment, glanced at the unread messages, and only then saw the content Fang Xian had sent 2 hours ago. "No, I didn't have experiments today. I went out to eat." Fang Xian, being sharp as always, caught on to the second half of her sentence and asked, "With whom?" Fang Jingjin hesitated for a moment and said, "With Professor Song and a few fellow students." Fang Xian seemed to relax slightly on the other end of the phone, repeated some repetitive topics, and finally said, "It's fine to be with Professor Song and them, but if any boy asks you out or tries to pursue you, you have to tell your sister first, understand?" Fang Jingjin replied obediently, "I understand, sister." Fang Jingjin actually realized very early on that she was different from others. In her memory, her parents' relationship was not harmonious. When Fang Jingjin was 4 years old, her parents made headlines in Ning City. The headline read, "Socialite unhappy with husband's affair, stabs tycoon 13 times before committing suicide." Except for Fang Xian, no one knew that behind this news, there should have been an additional line, "Young girl witnessed parents murder-suicide." That year, Fang Jingjin was 4 years old, and Fang Xian was 20. At 20, Fang Xian suddenly took on all the responsibilities and burdens overnight, working day and night to stabilize the crumbling Fang family. It wasn't until much later that Fang Xian discovered Fang Jingjin couldn't speak. For a long time, Fang Jingjin's memories were filled with her sister holding her and seeing various psychologists. Fang Xian's expression was resilient yet on the verge of collapse as she asked the doctors, "Is there any solution?" Later, Fang Jingjin finally spoke, and her first words were, "Sister, don't be sad. I'll be good." She and Fang Xian relied on each other, seeing many doctors, each of whom said, "There is no definite treatment plan, only auxiliary treatment and hope for time." Fang Jingjin was precocious and quickly understood what post-traumatic stress disorder and expressive language disorder were, as well as why she didn't like to cry or laugh. She understood why she couldn't be happy or sad. It turned out to be a psychological illness, and Fang Xian's carefulness toward her stemmed from this. Fang Jingjin felt that her sister was too hardworking. She didn't want her sister to be so exhausted, so she always listened obediently and tried hard to pretend to be like everyone else. For this, she memorized micro-expression psychology and could quickly judge everyone's emotions. She always felt that her disguise was very successful, pretending to be introverted and shy, until she met Chiyu, and she experienced helplessness and confusion for the first time. Because Chiyu would make requests that she didn't know how to respond to, like during evening self-study time, he would snatch the test paper from her hand and say, "Fang Jingjin, come, I'll teach you how to play games." With that, he handed her a game controller and personally taught her how to play video games. Although Fang Jingjin felt that doing this during study time was wrong, Chiyu got very close to her, breaking the safe social distance. She couldn't bring herself to say no or stop. After playing a few rounds, Pei Jing behind them couldn't help but complain to him, "Chiyu, don't corrupt Jingjin. Come on, I'll play with you." Jiao waved his hand, saying, "Your skills are too bad. Playing video games with you is even more tiresome than shooting three-pointers. It's not fun." Insulted, Pei Jing angrily retorted, "Who can't shoot three-pointers?" After saying that, he grabbed Jiao and insisted on challenging him. Jiao shrugged, casually tossing his own game console to Pei Jing, saying, "Let Jin represent me and play against you." Pei Jing grumbled about who was looking down on whom but was knocked out by Fong Jinjin in the first round. Pei Jing felt as if he had seen a ghost, insisting that his hand wasn't feeling right and stubbornly demanding, "Let's go again," seizing Fong Jinjin to continue the next round. As they played, his expression became increasingly gloomy. Fong Jinjin glanced at his pale face and asked Jiao, "Should I let him win? Is he unhappy?" Jiao, enjoying the spectacle, couldn't stop laughing and stuffed a candy into Fong Jinjin's mouth, saying, "No, no, no. If he's unhappy, then I'm happy." He praised her again, saying, "The pupil can be taught. Remember to say it was me who taught you when you go out." In fact, it was a few years later that Fong Jinjin heard from Pei Jing. Back then, Jiao thought you were too obedient and worried you'd get bored, so he always grabbed you to play those non-academic games. Jiao would grab Fong Jinjin to be his little sidekick. When he played on the court, Fong Jinjin had to stay in the crowd and cheer for him. Once, after the end of the second-year joint exam, Fong Jinjin was still sitting on the sidelines, lost in thought and feeling sleepy. Suddenly, a basketball flew straight towards her. The basketball hit Fong Jinjin's forehead directly, and she couldn't dodge it in time. With a thud, she fell from the bench to the ground. As she fell, she thought to herself, "The trajectory of this parabola is very standard." However, on the other side, Jiao was shocked. He yelled, "Are you okay at playing basketball?" Then he rushed over, pulled Fong Jinjin up, and asked her if she was in pain. Fong Jinjin felt it was okay, but she was always quiet and spoke slowly. In Jiao's anxious eyes, he thought she might have been hit too hard and gone silly. On the spot, he lifted her up and ran to the infirmary. Fong Jinjin was short, and Jiao carried her as if she were carrying a doll. Jiao was well-liked, and the staff in the infirmary were familiar with him. They joked, helping others again. However, Jiao wasn't in the mood for jokes as usual. His face didn't look good. He said, "Quick, take a look at her. She got hit by the ball so hard. Don't let her high IQ get knocked out." He asked Fong Jinjin again, "Does it hurt? Are you scared?" Fong Jinjin quickly said, "It doesn't hurt." After her sister applied medicine for her in the infirmary, as they walked back to the classroom while the sun was setting, Fong Jinjin sipped the drink Jiao bought for her. She glanced at Jiao, who still looked worried, and after thinking for a long time, she finally explained to him, "I didn't stay silent because I was scared. I just don't talk much normally." Her sister once told her, "Jinjin, don't tell others about our visits to the doctor, okay?" Although her sister didn't explicitly say it, Fong Jinjin knew her sister was worried that she would be isolated and ostracized. The rule of this world was not to let others know about the shameful past of their Fong family, not to let others discover her so-called psychological illness. But in 15 years of life, Fong Jinjin had the desire to explain herself to someone for the first time. "Jiao, I just have expressive language disorder, so I don't really know how to interact with people." Fong Jinjin explained the meaning of expressive language disorder. Jiao was stunned for a moment, but then he bent down, looked her in the eye, and said seriously, "Jinjin, it's okay. You're not different from others." Fong Jinjin had asked Jiao out, and initially, Jiao didn't hold much hope. However, after nearly 2 weeks, one day Fong Jinjin actually sent him a message, asking if he was free. Jiao had been extremely busy lately, with the affairs of the family conglomerate and the work at the biotech company weighing heavily on his mind. When he received Fong Jinjin's message, he had just flown back to China from New Zealand. But he told Fong Jinjin that he was free. As fate would have it, on the day of their appointment, Jiao had a small meeting with Professor Song. He went to the school in the afternoon, thinking that after the meeting, he could pick up Fong Jinjin. Jiao didn't inform Fong Jinjin of this arrangement beforehand. When he arrived at the school, Fong Jingjin was in the lab working with cells. Qiyu secretly stood outside the door, watching her through the glass on the door for a while. Fong Jingjin didn't pay any attention to the commotion outside the door, completely focused on her cell cultures. Qiyu casually grabbed a passing doctoral student and asked when Fong Jingjin started her experiment. As Qiyu expected, the doctoral student said, "Sister Jingjin came in the morning." Throughout the afternoon, Qiyu was absent-minded during his meeting with Professor Song. When it was 5 o'clock, he waited for Fong Jingjin at the door of the lab. When Fong Jingjin walked out, she was startled to see him. "Why are you here?" Qiyu leaned against the wall. "Didn't you invite me to have dinner with you?" "I didn't have much to do this afternoon, so I came to pick you up." He said it casually, as if he were passing by, handing Fong Jingjin a bottle of Coke. The restaurant they went to for dinner was an Italian one, which Qiyu found interesting. He asked Fong Jingjin, "How did you choose this place?" To be honest, from Qiyu's understanding of Fong Jingjin, she wasn't picky about food. Eating Italian pasta and eating instant noodles probably didn't make much difference to her. If one day humans could survive on energy drinks, Fong Jingjin would definitely be a loyal customer. Choosing this popular upscale restaurant in Ning City was far beyond Qiyu's expectations. Oh, Xiaolin recommended it. Xiaolin was a junior in Fong Jingjin's lab. Her research abilities were questionable, but when it came to eating, drinking, and having fun, she was definitely at the top of the list. Qiyu pushed the dessert towards Fong Jingjin and smiled. "You personally booked the restaurant. This can be considered one of my annual honored events." Fong Jingjin didn't say anything, and throughout the meal, Qiyu spoke more while she spoke less. After dinner, Qiyu originally thought it would end there, but he heard Fong Jingjin ask him, "I have a friend who gave me 2 tickets to a music concert. Do you want to go together?" Qiyu wasn't particularly interested in this leisure activity, but he felt it was still early, and it was rare to get Fong Jingjin to come out and play, so they should spend more time together. He hadn't thought much about why he felt this way. It was like years ago when he felt like pulling Fong Jingjin into a colorful and vibrant life of indulgence just because she was buried in books. He hoped to make Fong Jingjin more vibrant. When he saw that Fong Jingjin didn't answer, he was about to say, "Or maybe we could watch a movie," but Fong Jingjin nodded and agreed. Indeed, neither Qiyu nor Fong Jingjin were particularly artistic people. Qiyu regretted it a bit after spending 10 minutes in the concert hall. Listening to classical music was almost as boring to him as playing the piano to a cow. It was simply a waste of precious resources. However, Fong Jingjin, sitting next to him, looked serious, treating the music with a scholarly attitude. It didn't seem like she was here for leisure. It was more like she was taking a vocal exam. After a piece ended, Fong Jingjin suddenly continued to explain the previous piece. This piece is Chopin's Second Piano Concerto, and it tells a love story. Qiyu raised an eyebrow, deliberately asking her things she wouldn't know. Then what is love? Fong Jingjin immediately stopped talking. Seeing her frowning, Qiyu found it much more interesting than the concert. When the concert was over, Fong Jingjin was still sitting next to him, looking bored as she scrolled through the latest research papers on her phone. Qiyu, in front of Fong Jingjin, didn't seem to feel embarrassed. He just asked her, "Why didn't you wake me up?" Fong Jingjin immediately put down her phone and said, "The staff said we could stay in the box for a while longer." She raised her hand and lightly touched the dark circles under Qiyu's eyes. "And you look tired. You need to rest." Qiyu grabbed her fingertip absent-mindedly, holding it lightly in his palm. "Sorry, was it boring for you to listen to the concert alone?" "Not at all," Fong Jingjin said. Fong Jingjin rarely voluntarily recalls the time when Qiyu left. She didn't want to remember, nor did she want to. As the second semester of sophomore year approached the holidays, the tense atmosphere in the class began to spread. At that time, Qiyu no longer spent every day on the basketball court, nor did he drag Fong Jingjin for half an hour of entertainment every day. Fong Jingjin would always remember that day in early summer when the weather was drizzling and Qiyu suddenly said to her, "Jingjin, I can't accompany you to take the exams." Fong Jingjin was stunned for a moment and asked, "What?" Chiyu's expression remained unchanged, perhaps because his thoughts were more mature than those of his peers, showing the calm attitude he would later become known for. He didn't mention the complexity of the family property dispute, just as he knew about Fang Jinjin's psychological issues but always treated her like an ordinary person. He also never revealed anything about Fang Jinjin to others. He only said there had been changes at home, and he needed to study abroad. Then, he told Fang Jinjin, "If the butler doesn't have time to bring you meals in the future, ask Pei Jing to take you to the cafeteria." He didn't show much sadness about leaving, and he even joked, "Take care of yourself without me, okay?" Then, he turned to Pei Jing and instructed him, his tone as if he were sending a cat he had raised for many years to a temporary foster home. Fang Jinjin was not a person with many desires or demands, but for the first time that day, she asked Chiyu, "Do you have to go? Can't you stay?" But Chiyu said, "I can't," and for the first time in many years, Fang Jinjin felt lost. She spent a long time unable to get used to not seeing Chiyu every day. Fang Xian noticed that she was spending more time in a daze and asked her one day, "Jinjin, are you unhappy at school recently? Did you have a fight with your friend?" At that time, Fang Jinjin told Fang Xian about making friends, and Fang Xian was very pleased. Fang Jinjin shook her head. "No." She put down her spoon and looked up at her sister, feeling a bit sad. But he left. Fang Xian was taken aback. Fang Jinjin recounted Chiyu's going abroad to study. After a long time, Fang Xian comforted her. "Jinjin, people are just passers-by on each other's journeys. Most people can only accompany you for a while, and parting is normal. But why did he have to go?" Fang Jinjin's eyes were a bit sore, and tears welled up. "Sister, I feel a bit sad. What should I do?" Fang Xian, suppressed by her sister's initiative to express her emotions, stroked her head. "Jinjin must really like this friend. It's normal to feel sad about parting. Sadness is just temporary. Time will heal everything." Like, was this what it meant to like someone? Fang Jinjin wasn't sure. But from Chiyu, she learned for the first time about missing someone, feeling sad, feeling upset, and feeling heartache. In the future, whenever she thought of the moments spent with Chiyu, it felt like licking honey off a knife's edge. Fang Xian said time would heal, but she didn't say how long it would take. Even after 10 years, Fang Jinjin still hadn't moved on from the age of 16. Chiyu and Fang Jinjin's interactions became more frequent. Sometimes, whenever he had spare time, Chiyu would detour to the school to bring dinner for Fang Jinjin. Fang Jinjin didn't seem to mind his presence, though she would hurriedly eat when she was in the middle of important experiments, saying, "It's troublesome for you to come." Chiyu teased her, casually remarking, "I wonder how you take care of yourself normally." He added, "If I don't bring you dinner, how will you replenish your energy?" Relying on photosynthesis. After saying this, Fang Jinjin didn't react much, but it was Chiyu himself who seemed taken aback for a moment. He had only been delivering meals to Fang Jinjin for 2 or 3 months, yet he inexplicably placed himself in a parental role. However, in reality, during the time Fang Jinjin lived alone, she had still managed to learn to buy food from the cafeteria herself. Before receiving the call from Chiyu's assistant, Fang Jinjin was watching a popular romantic drama recommended by Shou in her apartment. The plot was somewhat melodramatic, bordering on the contemporary version of Romeo and Juliet. Fang Jinjin sat cross-legged on the sofa, watching the confession scene between the male and female leads on the screen. Her voice was soft, barely audible in the spacious living room, as she tried to imitate the male lead's confession, "I like you." She felt her tone wasn't quite right, so she rewound the scene and practiced again, "I like you." After several attempts, she still felt like she hadn't mastered the art of expressing emotions like this. Feeling somewhat frustrated, she turned off the TV. Understanding a complex research paper was simple for her, but learning to express her feelings was difficult. She sat on the sofa, lost in thought for a moment, when her phone rang. It was Chiyu calling. She picked up, and Chiyu's voice sounded somewhat unclear. "Fang Jinjin, are you asleep?" She felt Chiyu's voice was a bit strange, but she didn't dwell on it and replied that she wasn't asleep. There was a moment of silence on Chiyu's end, then suddenly someone else took the phone, claiming to be Chiyu's assistant, saying that Chiyu had drunk too much and was clamoring to see Fong Jingjin and asked if she was available. Shortly after, it started snowing outside. Fong Jingjin waited downstairs, and the car arrived in front of her. Chiyu, who seemed almost completely incoherent, was helped out of the car by his assistant. Chiyu was reeking of alcohol, his eyes bloodshot. Fong Jingjin raised her hand to help the assistant support Chiyu. Initially, Chiyu shook off her hand, trying to push her away, but losing his balance, he stumbled instead. Fong Jingjin didn't get angry. Instead, she went to help him. This time, Chiyu seemed to recognize her. Being taller, he rested his arm on Fong Jingjin's shoulder, partially enveloping her. Fong Jingjin, did you remember to eat? Most of his weight was leaning on Fong Jingjin, making her feel a bit burdened, but she didn't push him away, letting him hold onto her. She thought there was no point in talking to a drunk person at the moment and vaguely replied, yes. Chiyu persisted, pinching Fong Jingjin's cheek. Are you lying? He concluded, you must be lying. The assistant watched in astonishment. He had been with Chiyu for a long time, but he never expected to see Chiyu lose his composure like this, questioning someone about whether they had eaten. Seeing Fong Jingjin being pestered by Chiyu like a ruffian, the assistant reluctantly tried to persuade Chiyu to go home, but Chiyu refused. Fong Jingjin finally relented. Why don't you help me take him upstairs? There's a guest room upstairs. Although Chiyu had escorted Fong Jingjin home several times before, this was the first time he had stepped into her apartment, and in such an intoxicated state. But to say he was completely intoxicated wouldn't be accurate. There was still a trace of alertness in his bones. He tried to survey the surroundings, trying to leave, but Fong Jingjin held him back. Chiyu, you've had too much to drink. Chiyu calmed down a bit, barely recognizing who was in front of him. After all, people tended to act on instinct when drunk. He grabbed Fong Jingjin's wrist, staring at her for a while, once again confirming whether he was in a safe environment. Fong Jingjin. Yeah. Fong Jingjin replied with a good temper, then said, you need to rest. Chiyu didn't let go of her hand, still holding onto Fong Jingjin's wrist, and eventually, he fell asleep without his guard up. He slept for a long time. Looking out the window, the distant streets were covered in a thin layer of white snow. Fong Jingjin lowered her eyes to look at Chiyu's face. After so many years, she once again felt a hint of bitterness rising from the depths of her heart. She thought Chiyu's job must be very difficult, perhaps as difficult as her sister and brother-in-law's. Otherwise, why would he have to socialize like this? But Fong Jingjin lived in her own world, unable to fully integrate into this world. She couldn't help Chiyu with anything, unable to ease his troubles. Her voice was so low that she couldn't even hear herself clearly. Chiyu, I like you. The rosy feelings of love in the TV drama were false. Fong Jingjin felt that liking someone was bittersweet and difficult to express, filled with sadness and helplessness. Chiyu was deeply intoxicated, undisturbed by the snowy weather outside, and didn't hear Fong Jingjin's murmurs. He breathed steadily, resting peacefully. The next day was still snowy. The temperature in Ning City was unusually low this winter, and the snowfall seemed to be increasing rather than stopping. When Chiyu woke up, he felt a headache and looked around, momentarily unsure of where he was. He got up and went outside, only to find Fong Jingjin, who had a precise daily schedule, sitting in the living room writing her literature review. At that moment, Chiyu thought he was still in some kind of dreamland. Lost in thought, Fong Jingjin's gaze shifted from her laptop screen. You're awake. Chiyu had lived alone for many years. Over these years, he had experienced the ups and downs of his family, had conflicts with his relatives, and had suffered headaches from late-night socializing. Every day, he adhered to a facade and dealt with people in a cunning and deceitful manner, honing a heart of stone amidst the intrigue. But Fong Jingjin was different. It seemed that only Fong Jingjin, whom he had known since youth, could make him feel at ease amidst the scheming. Fong Jingjin looked at Chiyu with an open expression, making him feel like he had no secrets. He washed up on his own and then sat silently across from Fong Jinjin to have breakfast. He explained to her, I had dinner with an investor in the extracorporeal diagnostic industry whom I've been collaborating with for years, and I accidentally drank too much. Fong Jinjin replied with a casual, "Oh," and casually mentioned a name. Was it him? How did you know? Jiao asked. I've read some related reports. Where? She mentioned a small and obscure forum in New Zealand. The topic ended there, and silence ensued. After a while, Jiao asked her, Why did you let me stay over last night? Fong Jinjin's explanation was very calm, her tone relaxed. Oh, because I saw how hard your assistant was working, and you refused to leave. Her willingness to help made Jiao feel a bit dark-minded about himself, but also somewhat angry. Do you know it's very dangerous to let a man stay overnight? Fong Jinjin met his gaze. But you're different. How am I different? He asked. But this time, Fong Jinjin didn't answer his question. She lowered her head, avoiding the topic. Jiao felt angry at her lack of defenses, but also hated his own despicability. He stood up, walked to where Fong Jinjin was sitting, looked down at her, and held her chin. I'm not as safe as you think, Jinjin. Originally, he hadn't planned to do anything, but looking at Fong Jinjin's face, he felt like the alcohol from last night hadn't completely worn off, and for a moment, he wanted to act recklessly and kiss her. But with a little distance between them, he stopped himself. He let go of Fong Jinjin's chin, sighed lightly, and prepared to leave. However, Fong Jinjin grabbed his hand, not letting him go, and planted a very light kiss on his jawline. Fong Jinjin looked a bit bewildered as she asked, Like this? This time, Jiao was truly stunned. After a while, he asked incredulously, Do you know what this represents? Where did you learn this? From TV dramas, Fong Jinjin said. Do you know that you have to like someone before you can do this? Fong Jinjin didn't seem as nervous this time. Yes, I know. Liking someone. She spoke of liking someone as casually as she would talk about liking her sister or liking a piece of furniture. She was glad that he was liked, but he also felt helpless because Fong Jinjin was so naive about the ways of the world. His voice was hoarse. Liking someone and liking someone are different. Jinjin, not all likes can lead to kisses. Fong Jinjin suddenly smiled. I see. Her expression seemed like she was making a sacrifice of herself as she said lightly, I know, it's not right to kiss someone casually. It's not allowed. She had her own logic. You don't have a partner right now, so I haven't committed a moral error. When you find someone you like in the future, I won't do this anymore. Jiao was speechless for a long time, almost considering it an escape, and then left almost as if fleeing. During that anxious week, Jiao still had his assistant deliver dinner to Fong Jinjin at school, but he didn't know how to face her himself. One night, he tossed and turned, thinking, what if he used Fong Jinjin's trust in him to keep her by his side? Would deceiving her into believing this was love be a good choice? But that wouldn't be fair to Fong Jinjin. Coincidentally, Peijing came to Ning City on a business trip, and they met up for a meal. In the midst of their conversation, Jiao mentioned seeing Fong Jinjin. Peijing immediately became interested. Is Jinjin back in Ning City too? What do you mean back in Ning City? She went abroad for further studies a few years ago. Didn't she tell you? Jiao froze for a moment, reflexively picked up his phone to search for Fong Jinjin's academic history. The search engine results told him that Fong Jinjin had gone to the west coast of the United States 6 years ago and spent her doctoral years there. But speaking of Jinjin, she's quite adorable. Peijing chuckled. Back when we were in high school, almost every girl liked you, but Fong Jinjin stayed quiet in the background. Did you think she was too well-behaved, so you liked teasing her? But when you left, she was a bit down for a while. I was thinking of comforting her, but she packed up and left to pursue her research career. There are only 3 types of people in this world: men, women, and researchers. Jiao kicked Peijing jokingly. Stop talking nonsense. Jinjin is really interesting. At first, for the first 2 years, she would occasionally ask me about you. Every time she came, she would bring me afternoon tea, afraid that I wouldn't accept it, insisting on giving it to me, as if it was a business transaction. What did you tell her? I was busy at that time and didn't communicate with you much. I just said you should be studying in San Francisco. She was stunned for a moment. San Francisco? I was there for half a year, and then I went to New Zealand. After saying this, he paused for a moment, reread the entry about Fang Jinjin's doctoral school, and felt his temples pounding. It doesn't matter. Jinjin is childish. Later on, she stopped asking me. I guess she forgot about you. I didn't expect you two to have such fate and meet again. In that moment, Jiao sorted out his thoughts, as if talking to himself. She didn't ask you because she learned to find information about me online. How much trivia did she have to go through to find a comment on a forum? What kind of emotions did she have to feel to go to the West Coast to find someone who might be living there? With such excellent achievements in research on the West Coast, why did she resolutely return to Ning City? Was it because she saw him return to China and start a company here? Jiao felt his heart pounding, remembering when he told Pei Jing, "Take good care of Jinjin." He casually handed her over like an object to others, leaving no contact information for her. He never expected her to wander and travel, just to breathe the same air in the same city as him. These were things he didn't know, things he missed. Jiao caught Fang Jinjin downstairs in the experimental building one night, grabbing her and asking, "Why did you come back from San Francisco when you were doing fine there?" Fang Jinjin was holding a fortune-telling box given to her by a junior sister from the same department. When Jiao questioned her, she felt a bit guilty. "Oh, my sister wanted me to come back. Is that so?" Jiao's expression darkened, making Fang Jinjin a bit nervous. "Or is it because you saw the news about my company opening?" Fang Jinjin lowered her head, staring at her toes in silence. After a while, she tugged at the corner of Jiao's shirt sleeve. "Please don't be angry." She felt so bad and shameless, behaving like a stalker. Wherever Jiao went, she followed. Whenever she saw Jiao, she desperately wanted to meet him. As long as Jiao didn't push her away, she would shamelessly get closer to him. "Jinjin, do you like me?" Jiao asked the question again. "Yes, I do," she replied. Before Jiao could say anything else, Fang Jinjin quickly added, "When you find someone you like, I won't bother you anymore, okay? Let me steal a little more time with you, okay?" Her words seemed like a promise, but also like rehearsed lines she had thought of countless times. "You can take your time to find someone. I won't stand in your way." She was worried that Jiao would push her away, so she took the initiative to hug him tightly. After all, the situation couldn't get any worse than it was now. If she didn't hug Jiao now, she might never have the chance again. Jiao felt a pang in his chest. "Can I pursue someone else?" "Of course," Fang Jinjin replied. Jiao's heart raced as he raised his hand slightly to touch Fang Jinjin's cheek. How could he feel that Fang Jinjin didn't understand what love was? If this wasn't love, then there was no such thing in the world. He was about to speak when suddenly a slightly shocked voice came from nearby. "Jinjin?" It was Fang Xian. 2 months ago, it wasn't the first time Jiao and Fang Xian had met. They had encountered each other at a banquet. Fang Xian recognized Jiao, frowned slightly, greeted him reluctantly, and took Fang Jinjin back to the apartment. "Jinjin, let's talk." Fang Jinjin felt she had done something wrong, repeatedly disobeying her sister's teachings regarding Jiao. Her sister had instructed her to inform her if she liked someone, but Fang Jinjin didn't. Her sister had also advised her not to have any intimate contact with people, but Fang Jinjin didn't follow that either. "What's going on between you and Jiao? Are you in a relationship?" Fang Xian asked. Fang Jinjin shook her head, saying no. She didn't want to discuss it further. After a long silence, Fang Xian said, "Jinjin, you two are not suitable. How about finding someone else? Jiao is too cunning." In fact, Fang Xian's impression of Jiao was quite good. He was young and talented, handling things with ease. As a business partner, Fang Xian admired him. But as a potential partner for her sister, Fang Xian couldn't agree. She was worried that someone like Jiao wouldn't be compatible with Fang Jinjin. Fang Jingjin shook her head, showing rare persistence. No. Fang Xin. Is he bothering you? No. Fang Jingjin's tone became anxious. Sister, it's me who's bothering him. Then why is he getting so close to you without confirming your relationship? Fang Xin became even angrier. He wouldn't like me anyway. Fang Jingjin lowered her gaze, as if stating a fact. Why wouldn't he like you? He doesn't like someone too smart. He prefers someone more domesticated. But my IQ is high, and I can't cook. Fang Xin was momentarily speechless, unsure whether to criticize Jiao first or Fang Jingjin. Sister, I just really want to meet him. When I can't see him, I feel sad. I think that might be the reason I like him. Jingjin, this person is not good for you. He's not someone we can control. Being with him will only hurt you. I can't help you, Jingjin. How about finding someone else? It's okay. Fang Jingjin said lightly. I'm not asking him to like me. At this moment, Fang Xin wanted to curse Jiao for giving Fang Jingjin some kind of drug, but before she could speak, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. She wasn't planning to answer, but the caller persisted. It was Jiao. He said, Miss Fang, don't trouble Jingjin anymore. I know what you're worried about. I'm willing to transfer, shares, dividends, anything. Time is tight. I just had the lawyer draft a preliminary agreement, and I've already sent it to you. Miss Fang, I'm serious about Jingjin. During that 3-hour phone call, Fang Jingjin watched her sister's expression change from anger to seriousness, then slightly soften. She didn't know who her sister was talking to, and by the end, she was feeling exhausted and fell asleep in her room. When her own phone rang in the wee hours of the morning, Fang Jingjin groggily picked it up, hearing Jiao's voice on the other end. Come downstairs. Jingjin, I'm outside your apartment building. Fang Jingjin instantly became alert, went to the living room to find it empty, and saw her sister already asleep in her room. Gathering her courage, she quietly slipped out of the door. Before leaving, she felt guilty towards her sister, but there was nothing she could do. Whenever she encountered Jiao, she always seemed to break her own principles time and time again. Feeling sneaky, she found it amusing how Jiao would see her actions. It had a touch of the excitement of high school lovers sneaking around in the night. Did your sister scold you? Jiao asked. I'm sorry, it's my fault. No, she didn't, Fang Jingjin replied. After hesitating for a moment, she spoke honestly. My sister feels that we're not very suitable. But her tone remained cheerful. But it doesn't matter. I also know that we're not suitable. Jiao looked at her quietly and asked, Then why did you still come to see me? Fang Jingjin lowered her head and remained silent. Jiao sighed and pulled her into his embrace. His broad figure and warm chest enveloped her. How could we not be suitable? Is it because I'm not good enough? Jiao asked. Can I try harder? Fang Jingjin hesitated for a moment, seeming somewhat downcast. Maybe it's because I'm not good enough. Jiao cupped her face gently. How could you not be good enough? You're the best in my eyes. You asked me when I would find someone I like. Jiao paused and Fang Jingjin looked up at him, waiting for him to continue. Jingjin, I'm not looking anymore. I've found her. As the night grew deeper, the quiet streets were adorned with snowflakes. The dim street lamps cast speckled light and shadow on the street, and the silent feelings hidden in the passage of time were confessed on this winter night.